Hello, hello. I know it's not 7 o'clock yet, but I do want to check if everything is going fine. There's no one watching yet, but everything checks out. So let me go live on Instagram real fast and hope my internet connection holds. I am live. That is awesome. Instagram is working, YouTube is working, and now I'm going to add a third variable. I'm going to add Facebook. Here we go. Let's see if my internet is still working. Awesome. I'm live on Facebook as well. So, hello everyone. I think everything is working. Let me know if you have any problems with the connection, if things are not going well, not going smoothly. Please let me know if you can hear me and see me correctly. I'm going to switch a little bit between, I have my YouTube there, I have my Instagram there, and I have Facebook here. Facebook's going to be the weirdest one to watch because there's no way I can get my iPad up where my camera and my phone actually are. So that's going to be a little bit weird. I see some people trickling in, so that's awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. It's really cool that you're taking the time to watch this live. And please, again, let me know if there's anything not going smoothly. So anything wrong with sound or imagery, please let me know so I can see if I can fix that. Also, if my internet connection eventually is like, nope, 3 streams is absolutely not okay, I might actually cut Facebook. Sorry, people on Facebook, I'm very sorry. But I want to give priority to YouTube and to Instagram. The good thing about Instagram is that I'm going to talk for about a maximum of 10 minutes about the subject of today, which is how to set goals for your comic and creative dreams. And after that, I really want to get into your comic questions. So if you have any issues that you're running into right now while making your comic, and that can be art-wise, story-wise, productivity-wise, how do you even get started? Like all kinds of questions. Everything is fine. You can ask me those questions. And the good thing about Instagram is that I can actually invite you to join me live. That does kind of mean that you need to be here face to face with us. But if you have any questions that you feel like might benefit from going back and forth a little bit, and that might be really helpful. So if you have a question like that, you can join me on Instagram. You can find me anywhere when you search for Pencils and Stories. And that's just as one word, Pencils and Stories. That's what I'm called everywhere except on Twitter. It's close on Twitter. But yeah, awesome. I don't see any alarming comments about any hiccups anywhere, so I guess we're good. I want to check on Facebook if I can actually see if people are watching, but I'm afraid of actually killing off the live stream. So I'm just going to leave it and hope we'll have any questions on Facebook that I will see it pop up. Yeah, okay. So it's been 7 o'clock, so just going to start. I want to welcome you again. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. We're going to do 3 live streams this week. Today, tomorrow, and then on Friday. They're all at the same time. So this time, 7 o'clock Central European time. That is 10 a.m. PDT. So if you're in America, you can kind of figure out what the time is going to be for you. Yeah, so we're going to talk about comics. This is also the Celebrate My New class on Skillshare, which I will share a little bit about later. But today we're going to talk about goals. Goals for your creative life, for your comics, and then how can you pick a comic project that actually fits those goals, and how do you even go about that? And then on a day-to-day basis, what kind of goals are you focusing on? Because you can set really big goals, and then you can break those goals down into more manageable little milestones. So that's really, so that's what I'm going to talk about for 10 minutes. And then, like I said, afterwards is time for questions. I see everything is working smoothly, so I'll just continue. So creative goals, and that's a big topic. It's different for every single artist. There's artists who want to become professionals. There's artists who want to stay, like, keep their art as a hobby or something that they at least not want to monetize. There's people who do art on the side and they do it next to their day job. There's all kinds of ways that you can be creative. Whether you monetize or don't monetize, it doesn't matter. But it's still really fun to set goals and kind of see where you want to eventually end up. And I always encourage you to just set cool goals for longer periods of time. For example, one of my goals is to become, I already am a webcomic artist, but to expand my audience, eventually kickstart my comic Recollection City. I also have ideas for other comics that I want to do, and I also want to improve as an artist. So those are goals for my comic that I have, and then I have my business goals, which is related to teaching other people about making comics, and those actually have monetary goals attached to them. But let's focus on artistic goals, purely artistic goals. For me, it's making comics in my free time, also using all of that comic stuff for my YouTube channel, and eventually kickstarting Recollection City. That's my webcomic. That's what I want to do, and eventually get to my next comic, to my next comic idea, and improve as an artist. That is a big dream of mine as well. And those are really, really big goals. And what I always recommend is setting big goals is really, really great, but then also breaking that goal down into smaller goals, because there's this theory that if you set really outrageous goals that it will get you really motivated. I am a little bit more nuanced in my opinion about that. I also feel that you have to have goals to work towards that feel more achievable than that. So for example, making all kinds of webcomics and improving as an artist, that stuff's going to take me a lifetime. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So that's going to take me a lifetime. That's a gigantic goal. And it's a goal that kind of doesn't end as well. So I really recommend to set a smaller goals. So how do you go about that? I actually recommend to work your way backwards. So in the case of my creative goal, which is the webcomic thing, for example, when I work my way backwards, I eventually get to, like, I have a body of work, I'm going to kickstart it all and stuff. But then I eventually get to the smaller goal that is, I actually need to start making webcomics. And that's where Recollection City comes in. And then I can set that as a goal. Make Recollection City, that is a goal of mine. And then you can break that goal down even further. For example, for me, in order to publish Recollection City, I actually had to create the comic, first of all, and I had to create a website where I could put my comic, and I actually need to promote the comic because I do want an audience that reads my comic. So those are all different kinds of goals just for the Recollection City goal. So can you see where I'm going? And then you work your way backwards and you make the goal smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually you get something that you can actually do actionable work on. And that's going to be the third day of live stream, actually, where we talk about really, really actionable day-to-day steps that you can take. That's what we're going to talk about on Friday. Today is all about the goal setting. So Recollection City is a goal, and then we can make smaller goals again. Like, for example, finish the outline of the story, which is a really kind of a big milestone. I have created the Skillshare class about creating an action plan for your comic, which is part of why I do these live streams this week. And there I call it milestones. So you have your big goal, and then you have your goal of making that one specific comic that you choose. And then you can set milestones. For example, a chapter is a milestone, but also finishing the story is a milestone. Finishing each and every character design that you're going to need in your comic is also a milestone. Those are small mini goals that you're working towards. And see how it becomes more and more manageable the smaller you get. And that's great about having really big goals and really small goals. I am of the opinion that you need both. It's part of productivity, it's part of project planning, and they're both really great. And in the day-to-day, you focus on the smaller goals, because if you start your day, you get up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to work on my comic. Why? Because I want to make this gigantic comic and I want to become a comic artist and stuff. And it can get really overwhelming if you have a comic idea that's hundreds and hundreds of pages. That's going to feel really overwhelming. Today, you can only do a small amount of work. So that's why you need the smaller goals as well, because you can kind of hit those milestones, get that feeling of progression and knowing that your comic will eventually get done because you trust that process. One last thing I wanted to say about the really big goal is that why is it important to have that really big goal? Because it's so far away and it's so, it takes so long to do, and your goal might change a little bit as you go over the years. Why do you want to set that huge goal? I think if you take that huge goal and you work your way backwards, like I just mentioned, that it kind of informs what kind of comic you're gonna make right now. If one of your goals is that you want to build a really loyal fan base around a really funny comic, and you want to make people's day and want to make people laugh, then you kind of know that those are the kinds of comics that you might want to focus on, that you want to develop your skills in humor and punchlines and having this really snappy kind of storytelling style. If for example, for me, I want to create epic stories. Adventure stories are one of my favorite things to make. I also knew that it was going to be a long comic, Recollection City. I want to do longer form stories. So I knew that I had to put as many stuff in my comic as I really like to draw, because that I'm going to work on this in my free time. It's my passion project, and it's going to take me a long time to finish it. So that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to make this as fun as possible for myself, which means I need these and these kinds of storylines. I need a certain kind of style that comes easy to me, and that kind of stuff. So I think if you kind of know where you want to end up, what kind of body of work you want to have, or for example, if you want to improve as an artist and that making comics is one of the ways that you're doing that, you also know that you need to put stuff into your comic that it's also a little bit challenging for you. For me, that's interiors, buildings that are very symmetrical, and perspective, and I really want to improve my poses and my acting as well. So you kind of already often just get that automatically in a comic, which is why making comics is a great way to improve as an artist. But you kind of know what you need to put into your comic in order to get really good at something, for example. Also, if you just want to be known for a certain kind of genre, a certain kind of style, you envision that as your big goal, to have this great body of work that's very, very, very specific genre. If you want to touch the hearts of a very specific audience, then you know what kind of comics you need to make. So that's everything about what I wanted to say about goals and goal setting. If you have any questions about that, you can ask them. You can also ask me anything about making comics. Like mentioned, I do want to take quite a bit of time to actually answer your questions about your comics. If you're working comics, if you want to start working your comic. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of time to formulate questions that you can put in the chat on YouTube. You can put them in the chat in Facebook. I really hope Facebook is going to show me the chat, because I don't see anything on here that even resembles a chat, but I really hope it just pops up like I see sometimes. Yep. Yeah, no idea how to do that on Facebook, but I just assume that it's going to pop up. And if you're on Instagram, you can put it in the chat box. But like I mentioned, you could also, there's a little button. I see already somebody with a question, so that's awesome. Michaela Inchosti. I'm so sorry for butchering your name. You can ask your question through here. You can actually ask me. I think that's how it works. You ask me to participate in the live stream, which means that you will be in a live stream as well. You can do that if you want to have kind of like a back and forth, or you can just type your question in the chat box and ask your question right there. So I'm just going to give you some time to either join me live, or you can put it in the chat box Meanwhile, uh-oh, Instagram is doing a thing. Oh, you actually want to join. Awesome. I've never tried this before, so I really, really hope this is working. How do I go live? Let's see how this works. Oh, it said it refused. That's weird. I accepted you. I really hope it's not my internet connection. That's what I'm afraid of. Oh, you didn't mean to. Oh, it's only you did. Okay, I'm glad. I thought I did something wrong. Oh, you didn't mean to join with video. Oh, okay. That's fine too. That's totally fine. You're welcome to do that. But I can imagine that's kind of intimidating. I did it once in somebody's live streams. It was like a very well-known life coach here in the Netherlands. I was like, hello. And there's like, there were hundreds of people watching. So I can totally imagine that is that's intimidating. But just type your question in the chat. I also see that CJY.art had a question on Instagram. I don't see any questions on YouTube yet. Okay, let's make sure that I keep up to date with my 3 screens. It looks like a TV studio in here. You ask, how do you make your daily or weekly goals small enough to be attainable? I have a lot of trouble with knowing how long it will take me to get a page or even a panel finished. Yes. I'm not sure how far you are in your comic. I do feel like that last point that you make, like you don't know how long it takes for you to make a page or a panel, is something that you will get a feeling for the moment you make more comics. I kind of have an average right now that I know. Some pages take you longer, some pages take you lesser time to do. It depends on what's on the page as well. But you definitely will get a feeling for it the more comics you make. The beginning is always a little awkward making comics. You're still figuring things out. So my first page took me forever. It really took me weeks. And then eventually I got around to an average of 20 hours per page, and I still want to get that down. So that's something I'm working on. But after a page or 20 or so, I got a feeling for how long things were taking. And you will always be improving that speed as well. But for now, if you want to make really, really small and attainable goals, you could say, for example, to just take the 1 page as a goal, or just, finish the thumbnails for 10 pages. Thumbnailing is slightly faster to do. And then I do set vague goals for myself, like I want to get this done in a week or something. But because I had a buffer before, I could actually take some more or lesser time to do that. So I could kind of be flexible with that. So I'm personally not a person who's like, today I'm gonna plan this amount of time and I want to get this amount of work done in that amount of time. I have the time. I just sit down, I work on my comic, and then I'll see where I end up. Eventually. Maybe that's not the most productive way to go about it, but it's working for me. But if a page, for example, is still too overwhelming for you because you're still new at making pages, and I don't know what kind of comic you're making, how long you've been making it, is it like episodes of webtoons, or is it a page, or is it maybe even a strip? I don't necessarily know that, but if a page, for example, is still too overwhelming, you could actually say, well, I'm just going to finish a sketch for this page, and that's like one action that I put on my action list. And then sometimes you have a day where you have so little time, or you have just bad days, and then I might actually just say, I'm gonna just sketch the first row of, my thumbnail is done, and I'm gonna draw the first row of panels. It is kind of with pages and also more nebulous stuff like character designs or story. That's where it gets even harder sometimes to actually set attainable actions on your to-do list. But what I would do in that case, for example, I'm reworking sorry, excuse me. I'm reworking some parts of the Recollection City story right now. And what I do is just put on my to-do list, sit down in the chair for 10 minutes and actually brainstorm plot ideas for this specific scene. So you would really focus on specific scenes, specific pages, maybe even specific panels. Maybe you have a panel that's problematic and you're like, figure out, find some good reference or figure out what kind of pose I want to use for this one specific panel. So don't be afraid to go super, super small and just say like, I'm going to find some reference for this comic panel. And if I'm done in 10 minutes and I'm, not having my day, if I'm super busy, then that's fine. That's all that I do today. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it does. By the way, in between, guys, if you want to learn more about productivity, this week of live streams is also to celebrate that I launched a class on Skillshare. I call it Create an Action Plan for Your Comic Project. It's very specific about productivity. It's about setting the goals, setting the big goals, making them into smaller goals, putting a to-do list together that's actionable. Also, how you make your comic as fun as possible, how to work with distractions, how to work with how do you beat procrastination? How do you celebrate your wins? All that kind of stuff. I actually forgot to put the link to the Skillshare class in my bio on Instagram, which is dumb. If you're interested in a free month of Skillshare, please DM me after the Instagram live. And I can DM you the link where you get a month free of Skillshare and you can actually watch the class. The class is 35 minutes, so that is doable. Oh, thank you, Kim. Kim says, congrats. Awesome. Kim is actually part of my larger course, How to Start a Comic, which I have as well. It's like the big, that's everything in one. It's how to make a comic completely like done for you, laid out all the steps, action steps after every lesson. But shout out to you, Kim, for being here. That's awesome. Yeah, so the Skillshare class is live. You can watch it on Skillshare. If you have an account there, you have a subscription, you can actually watch it right now. Find me on Pencils and Stories again, or DM me for the link to the class. That was a little interlude. I see that Michaela, I think it's Michaela. I'm very sorry if I'm not reading it right. You posted, what is happening? Oh no. Why? Oh shit. Come on, Instagram. You can do it. Am I still live? Oh, I'm sorry if you just heard me. You just heard me swear just now. Are you guys still there? Can you let me know if you're still there and you can still hear me? Because I'm not sure if it just went straight back into it again, but it's actually frozen. There's also a question on YouTube. Instagram, can you still see me? Or do I need to start it up again? Oh, you can hear me on YouTube. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I just lost my Instagram connection, which is really annoying. And I don't see people interacting anymore in the chat. So I'm actually afraid that I lost the connection there. Oh, you can hear and see me. Oh, that's awesome. Was I away? Was I gone for a little bit? My old phone just went to standby. Well, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I was working on the question for Michaela. And then I'm gonna come to your question, Lemur Cohorte. That's an awesome username. You have a question on YouTube as well, so I'm getting back to you. But Michaela was first. How would you approach character designs for a large cast of characters? Put together a whole bunch of mood boards, but actually deciding on something feels very daunting. I like the idea of not liking the design later on, freezes me and doesn't even let me start. Question for you, Michaela. are all those characters going to be in the comic all at once, or are you gonna have some characters that are coming in later? Because I personally, because I know that feeling of like not liking them later because your art is improving. I actually have quite a few characters that I have in my head. I kind of know what they look like, but I haven't officially designed them yet because they come up way later in my story. So that's why I actually recommend to design your main cast. So if you have like very important characters, main characters, the most important side characters that are coming into the comic really soon, and then also maybe the villain or antagonist or whatever you want to call it, and some really important characters in the first chapter. If you're working with chapters, that's something that I would recommend you start with, because designing everything before you start your comic is not something that I personally recommend, because especially if your comic is large, you'll be designing and thinking forever. And then you're not starting your comic, which is something that you actually might want to do as soon as you can. So design the characters that come into your story soon, design them first, and your main cast, of course. And they might change a little bit over the course of the first few pages. Doesn't really matter. People love seeing art progression, so don't let that hold you back. But yeah, I do have characters too that I'm waiting to officially design, which is why you always want to have extra time basically next to creating your pages, because you always need to design things. Very often I design locations, clothing, objects on the fly. I just design them when I need them, when I know that they're not too complicated. But some things I actually know in my head that I need to start sooner on designing, because the designs might actually take a longer period of time because it's important characters, and you might want to start them really soon. So it might be helpful to have a list, kind of see what's coming up in the next chapter, for example, and if there's something that you need to start a little bit sooner. But I don't recommend designing your entire cast at once if they're not all coming into your comic at once. You said, yeah, they will probably trickle in. Yeah. work with the how would you call that? Work with like a character queue. Like your characters are in a queue, and eventually your time will come, but you'll have to wait a little bit, because first these characters are coming into the story and you're coming in later. And I'm gonna give you all the precious time and attention and design something good for you that actually fits your art skills at that moment. Because yeah, if they are coming in after 100 pages, that's quite a lot of time. So you will probably have improved by then. CJY, I'm glad it was helpful. Said it was helpful that I answered that question. Awesome. I have a question on YouTube. I have to look around a cable here. I'm sorry. I find it difficult to stick to one story idea. How do I know which story is the right one to start with? Yeah. I think it depends on, like I mentioned, I don't know how long you've been here for, but I think you've been here for quite a bit of time. So you've probably heard the stuff about the setting the goals, having a larger creative goal that you're working towards. If all your story ideas kind of fit that trajectory, I would actually look at the time that you have available right now, your current art skills, and kind of see if it does what's in your head justice right now. How motivated you are to start a shorter or a longer story. I'm not sure if your stories have different lengths. But for example, for my comic, I personally am someone who can really dive into a story for a really, really long period of time. So I already did some short comics, for school papers and little tiny projects. So I was familiar with making comics, and I just felt like I can jump into my comic no problem. I can just go be having fun with this for years. But if you're just starting out and you still need to figure out comics, you're still a little bit unsure about your art skills, it might be smarter to pick the shorter comic. But in general, If that all doesn't matter to you, in general, I would always advise you to pick the story that you're most enthusiastic about right now. If you have any specific preference, or if it has a certain message that you feel like you want to get out right now, or it is something that relates to something that is more recent for you and you kind of want to stay in that feeling, there can be all kinds of reasons for that. But if it really doesn't matter in terms of like length or how your art skills are going to affect the story that you pick right now, just pick the one that you're the most enthusiastic about, or the one where you're like, oh, I can grow the most in this story, or this is a story that I really want to put out into the world first. So do a little bit of soul searching and see if you have a slight specific preference for one story over the other. Because I do feel like you have the most chance of actually working on your comic in a way that's the most fun for you and have the most fun and be the most motivating to actually continue your comic work with a story that you're actually really enthusiastic about. Not sure if that's helpful. I hope it is. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you. Not at all relevant for let me know that you could hear me and see me. There's somebody called Muchiness. I love all your usernames. And Jim O'Reilly is here. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. So awesome. Let's see if there's any more questions. I don't see any new questions on Instagram. And there's still absolutely nothing to see on my Facebook screen. So I'm very sorry if you're on Facebook. Actually, go on Instagram real fast if you can. And just tell me like, hey, you have a question on Facebook. I'm actually not sure how to pull it up. But yeah. I'm still not sure if I'm going to continue with the Facebook thing. Because I do think all the connections are hogging my internet right now. And yeah. I might do it 2 live streams tomorrow because I do feel like Facebook is not the most watched anyway. I'm actually not sure if somebody's even watching. Sorry, I had to drink some water there. Hi, Bethany. Oh, that's awesome that you're there. Lemur Cohorte says, thank you. I hope that means that you got the answer to your question. No problem. I hope it's helpful. And just in the end, if it doesn't really matter to you, then it doesn't matter. So just pick one. It wouldn't be my advice. In the end, I don't think if they're all ideas and you're all excited about them, you cannot really go wrong. Questions, guys, questions. Give them to me. Can be about anything, about your story. If you have a very specific story problem that you're running into right now, or you're having productivity issues or anything, just throw them at me. Not at all relevant as a question on YouTube. I got a question. What's the most valuable lesson you learned from making your first comic? Who? My first comic is a while ago. Fun thing. I actually started writing. Eventually, when I learned how to write and learned what stories were and stuff, I just started writing. And then eventually, and I think I was already reading some comics back then. I was really, really young. So I cannot really remember what kind of comics they were. But I would just eventually, when I was like writing and I had this really cool image in my head, I was like, this looks better in drawing. So I would just start making comics on the page after my writing. It was in a little notebook. I was just writing comic panels, start writing again because it was easier, So I had this weird hybrid of like prose and comic stuff. And that was probably what I could call my first comic. And then what was my actual first comic? I was very much into writing and illustrating for a long period of time before I actually was like, no, I'm going to make an actual comic. And I think my very first comic that I tried, it was never published because it just never went anywhere, was a comic that was based on video games that I love to play. So it was a story about a character that gets sucked into a video game, and then there's like this whole actual existing world that they moved around in, and it was things with jungles and stuff. It was really cool, but eventually it just never went anywhere. And I worked on that comic for a really, really long time. And I think what's the most valuable lesson I learned from that comic? I think just having a lot of fun. What I really miss, because what I did a lot back then was actually just making a lot of side illustrations that were like just illustrations. And I also, something that I still love to do, but it's not the most economical way to do thumbnails, is that I would actually just draw the story out as it was in my head at that moment. So I did kind of like a storyboard almost, just on the page, no panel layout of whatever. So eventually you would actually have to turn that into panels. Later on for Recollection City, I had a period where I actually did that on Post-it notes. I would just draw what was in my head as a movie and draw that on Post-it note, kind of as a storyboard. But that just meant I had to draw way more, and just writing it is faster. So eventually I stopped doing that, but I kind of still love to do that. And I think the most valuable lesson is just keep having fun with your world and your characters, even though all of that stuff is never going to be in the comic. If you have motivational issues, or you have a really cool scene that's in your head, but it's coming up like in a few years, which is the bane of the existence of any webcomic artist, is like all the cool stuff that you have to wait years and years and years for to put it out. Just draw it out like you want. You don't have to make pages of it, but just draw the fun stuff next to it. I think that would be a really valuable lesson, because it just gets you hyped again about your story, and it gets you hyped about your characters. Hope that was helpful. Let's see. No new questions on Instagram, unless it froze, but I don't think so. It still says live. Martinez says, when is development enough development? I feel like a lot of people, myself included, develop characters, locations, etc. When is a good time to start? Yeah, I recognize that problem. I eventually came to a point where I knew in my head that I could start my comic, but you kind of have to get over a imaginary bump where you're like, oh, I can actually start making pages now. You're still kind of stuck in that development phase. It's kind of a stupid answer to say, like, eventually you will just know. But I think the more practical answer is that you, like what I said to Lemur cohort, as well, is that I would advise you to design the stuff that's going to be first in the comic. And I don't even mean the entire like first chapter. If you have a long first chapter, maybe design the most important stuff. Like if there's this very specific building, for example, that your characters come very often, and it's very important for setting the mood and introducing your characters and stuff, like design that building beforehand, but don't go and design everything of the entire chapter, because it just, first of all, you're not a big studio where they can actually do that, where they have like a lot of people all working on locations and characters, and even that, just it goes simultaneously as well. They have like a pipeline, like we're going to work on that scene, so that stuff needs to be designed. I don't think that everything is designed before they start animating. And it's the same with comics. Eventually you have your main cast, the clothing that they're wearing at the start of your comic, the first locations they're going to visit. And sometimes for me, that's even just a little floor plan. And just knowing the floor plan, kind of already know what it's going to look like. And all I need to do is find some reference when I actually get to drawing the page. Sometimes I don't even know what something is going to look like when I make the thumbnails, because some things are not as important as other things. Like main cast, very important buildings. If your cast is wearing a specific set of clothes for a really long time, you want to actually really put some more effort into designing the clothes. But if you have all of that stuff, and you know that you can start your first page because you have everything that you need for the very first page, I would just start. Just for the very few first pages, like I mentioned, main cast, villains, the most important locations, but even very important locations that come up in my chapter 8, I have not designed yet. Eventually, you need to bite the bullet, be a little brave, and just start. Also, you're probably going to work on a few pages before you actually start posting online, so you always have a little bit of buffer. You're always a little ahead. So, yeah, and always keep some room for some room in your time, in your schedule to actually design things. And you ask, what is your current comic called? It's Recollection City. You can find it at recollectioncity.com. Not at all relevances. That's a really good point. I've been struggling with motivation myself for almost the exact reasons you listed. Drawing stuff I want on the side has been helping. Yes. Yeah, for me too. You just get enthusiastic about your characters again. And sometimes you just need that for a little bit because you're in a very difficult scene. It's all very technical and you're drawing things. And then sometimes not every scene is as exciting to you to draw because they're in like a difficult location to draw, or it's a more quiet scene and you're in the mood for action, you know? So it can be good to just get that out on the side. There's no new questions coming in from Instagram, but I also see that there's still 2 people watching, so that might be why. Let's see. Martinez asks, "How do you feel about Webtoon and its platforms versus having your own domain?" So Webtoon and probably platforms like Tapastic, or it's Tapas nowadays. There's a new one that looked really interesting called what was it? Global Comics with an X, I think. That looks really interesting. I'm kind of keeping my eye on that one. But yeah, platforms and having your own domain, ideally, I would actually post on multiple platforms, including my own. I personally had a dream of having my own space on the internet. A lot of people also tell you that that's very smart because Webtoon, for example, can change their policy at any time. So it would be hard to just start something somewhere else all over again. I would just say, like, if you can, post it on your own website, but also in my case, that means having to pay for hosting. And, it was quite a hassle to set up. I used the WordPress plugin for that. And you kind of have to know what you're doing. Then you have to update the website sometimes as well. Technically, you have to back it up. So it is quite a bit of work as well. But it was really my dream to have my own place on the internet for my comic and have a comic website that just is completely in the style of my comic and it just features my comic. So that was something that I really wanted to do. But some people just post to Webtoons only and then cross-post maybe on Tapastic, and also cross-post if you have a certain format where that works, cross-post as well on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. There's some comics that do really, really great on Facebook. And I've even seen TikTok comics, kind of like comics in reels. You really have to have a specific. It's Sarah Scribbles. She's actually posting. She has her Sarah Scribbles, and then she has another side comic that is more about random subjects, I think. And I cannot remember the name of it right now, but she actually makes those little tiny panels into reels, and then she finds music that fits it and everything, and she does that on I think Instagram and TikTok actually. So but why I said ideally you want to post on multiple platforms is because it's a lot of work. You have to reformat things. Like, for example, my comic is just made, it's a web comic first for the web, and then I eventually want to print it, so I chose a very traditional page layout, which all works on the internet and on print, but then it doesn't work on Webtoons. So if I want to post on Webtoons, which I posted the prologue of my comic on Webtoons, I actually have to chop up the entire page and then put all the panels below each other. And then it doesn't work with the balloons, so I have to redo the balloons and stuff, and it's just a lot of work. which is why I stopped posting there, because I just didn't have the time. But if you can, posting on multiple platforms is always helpful for, your reach and finding your audience. So let's see. I'm gonna take a little bit of water again. I've just been sick a few weeks ago, and sometimes my voice still deserts me, which is too bad. I can really feel my throat getting scratchy. It's fine though, as long as you're not bothered by that. Bethany asks, what are some signs that you need to keep revising your story? And what are some signs you should stop revising and go with what you have? Bethany, do you feel like you're running into plot holes eventually? Or is it just that you feel like some things kind of could be better but might fall into place when you start thumbnailing? Do you have a feeling about that? Not at all. This is the biggest water bottle I've ever seen. It's not a water bottle. It's actually just I'm a savage and I just drink from the bottle. It's not an actual water bottle that I carry on me. Bethany says a little bit of both. If you have some stuff that you feel like you're going to run into problems with, that if you get there and you have still not figured that out, is gonna give you some problems, especially if it's actually a problem in the structure of the story. And by structure, I mean you didn't really set up certain things in a way that makes it super clear why other things are happening later on in the story, or your villain doesn't have like a good motivation for doing what they do, like kind of like the really, really structural stuff, if you get what I mean. I hope this makes sense. I would actually just continue until that is solid and that you have a solid outline. And with outline, I just mean bullet points. And I would at least recommend having bullet points of your scenes. You don't specifically have to have the entire scene written out yet. I personally go from idea, kind of like a idea of the story, and then I outline like the scenes, I rearrange the scenes, and until I feel like I have a solid story, like structurally, and all the events make sense, and kind of character motivations make sense. And then I go into the scene, and then I bullet point the scene out again in bullet points. I actually don't write prose or a very official script. I just do everything with bullet points. Then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. But start with structure first. Like start with the scenes and the actual story. Have that make sense and be solid. And then go into specific scenes. If there are scenes coming up where you're like, I can probably fix that when I get to it, I would just start. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Let's see if there's any questions on Instagram. Oh, I see that I missed a comment from Kim Boogman. Sorry, I know that sounded super Dutch. It's probably not how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry. I actually don't know how you would pronounce your name in English, actually. He said, it's great and would recommend. You're talking about how to start a comic, my large course. I think writing is just so hard for me. If you have any writing questions, Kim, and if you're still here, I don't know, after the whole thing went away on Instagram, you can actually ask me. You can ask me any writing questions that you have. Bethany says, yes, makes sense. Thanks. Okay, cool. Can I ask, this is for your story that we worked on when you did mentoring with me? I'm still so excited for that story. Sorry for outing, like, sorry for talking. I'm trying not to talk about anything specific because, it's your story. But, like, very cryptic. Is it that story? I'm super excited for that one. No pressure, though. No pressure. Yeah, and I see this getting very dark on YouTube, so I'm going to open the curtains. But I had, like, a beam of sunlight on my face when I started. But now it's getting a little bit dark. So let's open the curtains. Ah, light. Much better. Actually, no, it's a different one. Oh, cool. You have a lot of ideas. It's awesome. Try not to think about all my other ideas too much. Because Circle Electricity is going to take a while. It's gonna take some years. So other stories, sometimes just logging ideas and I'm putting them away so that I have them, but I don't work on them. I'm kind of rewriting some stuff for Recollection City right now because I'm on hiatus anyway. So I was like, better fix it now. Going into second chapter. So if I want to fix anything, I better do it soon. We've been talking for 45 minutes. If you have still, let me know. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting to see if there's any more questions coming in, again, reminder that I have a Skillshare class that I just launched and that you can actually get on YouTube. It's in the description. And on Instagram, you actually have to DM me because I forgot to put the link in my bio. The link is on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, but I don't think anybody is on Facebook, you can actually find the link there, but you can get a free month of Skillshare to try it out, try out my class, try out the entire platform. Full disclosure, if you eventually like Skillshare and you want to get a subscription and you clicked on my link, I will actually get a commission for that. Also, Skillshare will just eventually pay me for minutes watched. So if you have an account on Skillshare and you want to check out my course, that's very much appreciated. Yeah, so that's in the description below. Go there. It's creating an action plan for your comic project, which is full-on productivity side. If you want to start a comic, then productivity-wise, what would I recommend? We're going to talk about goals, about making that goal smaller and smaller and smaller, milestones, setting milestones for your comic, how you're going to track and batch your progress, and how to have the most fun with your comic, how to deal with distraction, procrastination, how to celebrate when you get a win, and then very practical, how do you schedule your comic work into your day-to-day life and what kind of actions need to be on your to-do list. So that is a class on Skillshare, 35 minutes if you have the time. Oh, there's a new question on Instagram from Michaela again. How necessary do you think it is to learn 3D for difficult environments and such? I don't think it's necessary. You can learn to draw anything, basically. If you do know 3D programs, they really might help to speed things up. Put everything in perspective, for example, put a few blocks in there and you kind of can figure out perspective things. Or even what some people do, just make entire environments and then either draw over them. And in some comics, but those are, there's a few webcomics that actually have seen them actually use 3D models in the background. It's a little bit jarring in my opinion, but I understand why they do it because the Webtoon schedule is insane. I think if you get paid by Webtoon and you have a certain kind of standard length for your episodes, some comics, I can absolutely see why they need to do that because it's just, you have to get it out really fast. And now you have those fast passes. So I think you need to be like 3 episodes ahead or something. So yeah, I can totally see why people do that. So it just, in the end, it saves time. It's not necessary, but it might save you time. So if you're into learning new things and you have the time, I would definitely actually recommend learning it. I actually want to really, really learn it. Also because I see people do some fun stuff with it. But if you can learn how to make it real fast, and, even if you don't necessarily one-on-one put it in your comic or draw over it, you can just use it as reference, basically. And since you make it yourself, you can just straight up copy it. There's no copyright issues. So that's great. And then there's the warehouse where you can actually download models and stuff. So you'd have to see what the policy is on those things because you did not make those things. But I think that Clip Studio Paint 3D models as well might be a license where you're allowed to use it, but look into that because I'm not sure about that. Not at all relevant. Says, I gotta hop off, but I'll watch the replay later if you answer this or not. Either way, is there a comic printing site you'd recommend? I'm just gonna be honest. No, I haven't looked into that at all lately. There were some really popular print-on-demand comics, but that's a while ago. That's a long time ago, and I don't recommend going off of those recommendations because the landscape probably changed a lot. I would do some Googling or go into some comic groups or on Reddit. Probably some comic. There's probably comic threads on Reddit. Just ask some people who are actually printing right now because I'm not, so I haven't looked into that at all lately. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. Martinez asks, have you ever made any Kickstarters for comic publishing? Not yet for my comic. I have kickstarted my large course on comics. How to start a comic is something that I kickstarted. However, I did use a course for that. That was very specifically targeted for comic creators. So I have some knowledge about it. I just haven't done it myself yet. Yeah, I don't know if you have any specific questions about that. If you have, I would actually just recommend going to Comics Launch, and that's comics with an X. So comicxlaunch.com. There's a podcast that has like tons of episodes, and it's all about self-publishing your own comics. And it's a lot about Kickstarter as well. So if you're looking for resources for that, I would definitely recommend Comics Launch. It's by Tyler James Fogel. Yeah, and he has the Comics Launch podcast as well, but also a website with articles. And like mentioned, I did his course on kickstarting your comics, but I just used it to kickstart a course. And it worked. It got funded, and yeah, it was a success in my opinion. So are there any more questions? You can actually, if you have a question later popping into your head, you can come to the live stream tomorrow because I'm live streaming tomorrow again as well. Same time, 7 p.m. Central European Time, 10 a.m. PDT, Los Angeles time, and Friday, same time as well. So you can ask me comic questions then as well if you have any questions later. You can also always DM me anywhere. So just so you know. Lemur Cohorte has a question again. It's still probably butchering your username. I'm so sorry. Have you ever worked on a comic with a friend? And if so, are there any tips for such collaboration? Not professionally. I kind of want to say yes, but that was more like for a hobby. And just for fun, but not really to publish anything online or anything. Yeah, as a tip, I would just say like make really, really good like agreements among each other, like who is doing what and how much time are we both putting in, and get successful and makes any money. Like just think about all that stuff beforehand, so you don't get any like weird. I'm actually doing a lot of work. I actually yeah, but that was never. We never actually made that. What I did was I was part of an art school for a while that had a course about making personal projects. What the teacher did was he assembled some teams. There were 3 teams a writer and an artist duo. And I was actually in one of those teams, and I was the writing part of that duo. And I was paired with an amazing artist, Mallory, and she eventually like we worked on our comic, and it was we both loved the idea. We had both it, and we picked something that was a subject and had kind of like artistic styles. Oh, my Instagram video just died. Instagram was like, you've been live for an hour. It's time to stop. Okay. Let's see if I could just go live again on Instagram. I'm sorry for interrupting myself. Like interrupting your question, I should say. Just gonna go live again. Yep, Instagram, I'm gonna live again. I'm going to go live again. Yes. Hello, I'm back. Everybody's gone. It doesn't matter. But yeah, we chose aesthetics that we both liked, and we got really excited live. So every week there was a live session, and we shared what we had done that week for the story. So she was doing character designs, and I was doing the writing on the side. So in a few weeks, I came up with the entire story and stuff, and I struggled a little bit, but it was all live, so it was good, so people could see that, it wasn't like a smooth process all the time. And she did really designs, and the story was called Emma and the Oofles, and it was just so cute, and it was a little bit Miyazaki-ish, I guess. It had a little bit of magic, and it was just really fun. But then right around that moment, she got hired by Nickelodeon, which I was like, I completely understand why this entire project is not going to work right now. But yeah, we already had some stuff of like, okay, so one of us is going to get a domain name, and Mallory at one point printed like beautiful cards and business cards for it. So you kind of have to make agreements amongst each other, like, especially when it's with a friend and you're not hiring somebody and paying them, you actually have to make agreements, I think, beforehand. So it's really clear who does what, and if there's anything that needs to be paid, how are you going to go about that? And if you get any money, how are you going to divide that? And with all of those steps. Machinez is going to check out Comics Launch. Yes, do that. That's a ton of information. And I actually do recommend his courses. He has also some stuff about like Facebook ads, which I'm still kind of like on the fence about. He's very much into comic promotion, all of the more monetizing stuff about comics, which is really great, and something I think is talked about, but there's a few resources, but I think he really nails it in like super niching down on that, and just really focusing on that and being like a really great resource for comic artists. There's a lot of people, actually. I'm still in the Facebook groups for certain courses that I did with him, and especially also the Kickstarter courses. Like I paid for it, so I just have that course now. I can do it over and over again if I. Please type it in the chat, guys. Also on Instagram. What are your favorite web comics right now? Martinez says, my current ones are Barbarous, Wildlife, and Tiger Tiger. I fell off the bandwagon for Wildlife. Tiger Tiger I've seen. I've read her previous comic, and I'm still so sad that it's stopped. It was gorgeous style. Like, so good. I'm actually not sure. It's a her, she, right? Who makes that? Or is it a they? Sorry if I got that wrong. Or are they calling themselves they or her? I'm actually not sure. Yeah, but that was a gorgeous comic, Progress. And then Tiger looks really good. I'm still following them on Twitter, and I see the artwork every time, and I'm like, oh, I need to get into it. But like, I don't know how many pages now, so I'm always like forgetting that it exists, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have the time right now to really get into a lot of pages. Yeah. Don't know about Barbarous, if I've ever seen that one. No, I don't think I know that one. Michaela on Instagram says Tiger Tiger again. Also, Covenant. I think think I've seen artwork for that, but I'm not sure if I'm confusing it with another comic. And Countdown to Countdown. Oh yeah, that's such an awesome style. Such a cool art style. I actually read that comic, but I got stuck somewhere halfway, and it's really hard in the navigation to go back to the place where I was. So I still need to kind of do that. Just so people know, I think that comic has a rating because it has some body horror stuff. Yeah. For me, sometimes it was a little on the fence of like, oh, that's really gruesome. But I'm very like I'm a bit of a high sensitive person, so it's a lot of stuff often gets really too much for me sometimes soon. So I actually have to really curate what I read sometimes. But I loved Countdown to Countdown's art style. Like, oh my goodness, it's so pretty. My favorite web comics are. I keep shouting about this comic constantly because it's like she has my most favorite style of humor, and it's my giant nerd boyfriend. It's so good. I see that my connection isn't stable on YouTube. I think I'm gonna cut Facebook live tomorrow, guys. I'm just gonna go live on YouTube and Instagram. I hope you guys can still see me and hear me. But yeah, my current favorite comics are My Giant Nerd Boyfriend. It's completely my humor. I love it so much. And Space Boy. Space Boy is just, I love it so, so much. Just great storytelling. It was one of the comics. I don't cry very soon with comics, but Space Boy actually made me cry in like the first, is it the first or second episode? I cannot even remember, but like he managed to make me cry. Yeah. So those are my two absolute favorites. Oh, and then Bookworms, and then not worms as in a worm, but Wyrms as in dragon. Bookworms, I think you pronounce it as. Yeah, it's on Webtoons as well, but I read it on the website. It's just bookwyrms.com. By Lorena Garcia, and that is one of my favorite comics as well. It's like people living in libraries. I mean, how cool is that? And it has like this really nice art style that I just so that's one of my favorites as well. There's so many. I'm like, oh no, I'm not mentioning like a lot of comics right now, but those are like my top 3 at the moment. Michaela says, I gotta run, but thanks for answering my question. See you tomorrow. Awesome. See you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Lemur said, Fangs is cute. Nevertheless, not even Bones. You read so many different comics from me. I haven't even heard of some of these. Not that I can keep up with the amount of webcomics that are on the web right now. I mean, so many. If you just open up Webtoon, it's like, and then there's Tapas and then all the people, you know, are on their own sites. People are a part of Hiveworks. Like there's so many comics. Yeah. Awesome. I had like a whole, on my Recollection City site, I have like a whole list of my favorite comics, but I actually have to update that again because not everyone is updating anymore. And there's some new stuff that I want to put on there, but I keep forgetting. We've been going on for more than an hour, guys. My voice is my voice is dying. So I think we're gonna call it here. Last little pitch for the Skillshare class. If you want to check it out, the link is in the description on YouTube. You can get a free month of Skillshare to check out my class and all the classes that are on Skillshare. Be mindful that Skillshare will not let you know that your free month is over. So definitely keep that in mind. If you don't want to continue and if you don't want to pay for Skillshare, then you have to cancel yourself. So I just want to put that out there. Yeah, but you can get a free month and then, you know, see if you like it or not. Yeah. And I would appreciate it if you checked out my class. I hope it is helpful. If you're on Instagram, DM me for the link because I did not put it in my bio. Yeah, so thank you all so much for hanging out. There were a few of you that actually hang out for, I think, the majority of the live stream. So that's super, super awesome. Yeah, so today we talked about goals. Tomorrow we're going to talk about something that will really help you to keep creating your comic when you've started. And that is all about creating the best chance for you, creating the best environment for you, the best mindset for you in order to keep making your comic. It's a little bit vague, but we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So if you want to know some tips on how to keep going with your development of your comic or making your pages, then definitely check back in tomorrow for another live stream. And also bring any new questions that popped up in your head. Let me know. And yeah, I want to wish you a very great day. If you still have some time today, maybe make some comics, and see you guys tomorrow. Bye.